Welcome to everybody joining us here today. My name is Rebecca Radice. I am with Post Planner, and I am joined today by the one and only Jade. And Jade, I swear, I hope I say your name correctly, Furubayashi.
Oh, you nailed it.
Did I get it? Woohoo!
100%. Hey, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. My name's Jade. I'm the brand marketing manager at Simply Measured. I'm the Leo of all Leos, and I'm really, really excited to be here today.
Ooh, love that. You're also a Beyonce fan, correct?
A big Beyonce fan.
Big Beyonce fan, and I absolutely adore this about you. You are a lover of Chipotle burrito bowls.
This is true. This is very true.
So awesome. Well, thank you, Jade, for being here today. We're going to talk about 5 ways to improve your Facebook organic reach, and it's a little something, I'd say, Jade, you and Simply Measured know a lot about. And what we're going to share today is all actual data that we have with Simply Measured's help pulled together, and we're going to walk you through how to analyze and benchmark your strategies so you know where you're starting, you know where you're headed. We're going to help you find the right mix of content for your audience, how to maximize your growth with visual marketing, then how to target your posts organically and post to unique audiences at the exact right time. So we're going to go ahead. We're going to dive right in, and we're going to start with where all of this kind of began. And I know that there's a lot of you out there that are thinking, you know, organic reach is dead. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about that. I'm sure you guys hear that an awful lot, Jade.
We do. It's definitely, and it is a real problem for a lot of brands, I would say. I think organic reach is definitely an issue, but it's fun to see people and brands get creative on how to increase that, and Post Planner is a great example of one that has definitely done that over the past year.
Well, it definitely is creativity for sure, that we're going to show some examples of that. But what's interesting is to see that organic reach is still alive and well. You really have to know how to tap into it. Right. And so we wanted to better understand what we had done to substantially grow our Facebook page in 2015. So we had contacted you, Jade, and Simply Measured, and you had found that in 2015, the Post Planner Facebook account grew their fan base from 98,000 to 289,000, or 193% growth, with nearly no paid promotion. And that was huge to us, to be able to see that everything we'd put in place really had given us the results that we were looking for. And I know sometimes you hear things like 193% growth, and you think, no way, there's no way that could translate into my business. And that's why it's so important for us to share that it was with no big budget, not that big brand budget that you typically think of.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's really an anomaly at this day and age. It's definitely achievable for a lot of people, but I think with the way that organic reach is trending, a lot of people shy away from investing the effort and the time and just opt for the pay-to-play model, which is definitely an effective way, but there are other options, and Post Planner is a great example of a brand who grew significantly, obviously, with very little paid. And the way I believe that you guys mostly, drove these types of results is really rooted in the content. As we'll talk about, I'm sure, later, you guys do a really good job of keeping a diverse mix of content and really understanding what your audience wants and needs. So I think that was kind of the major key that propelled a lot of this growth.
Yeah, and we are definitely going to share quite a few different examples of what that looks like. And you're right, it is a big part of it is finding that perfect mix of content for your audience. But we've also found a proven way to find that perfect mix of content that no matter the industry, no matter that vertical, it translates. And I think that's especially important in this day and age too, as we talk so much about maximizing your time, not having to reinvent the wheels, start something new all the time, but rather being able to learn from those proven systems that have come before you.
Right, absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, it's a really interesting use case for us as a measurement company to see all of the different aspects that are being pulled to drive this type of growth and to analyze that from the top down.
Well, and for us, we learned just as much. You know, we've definitely learned since then, learned a lot along the way as we've dug deeper into all of the data. And the exciting thing is to see that we have not only maintained, but continued on that exponential kind of growth pattern that we saw last year. And so all of that is what we've taken and translated into what we're going to share with you today, because we know, as Beth Comstock says, marketing's job is never done. It's about perpetual motion. We must continue to innovate every single day. And of course, that's across the board on social media, but definitely true in Facebook, where we're living in an environment that is constantly changing. It almost feels as if it's daily and hourly that we're down to these days, Jade. But it's a situation where we have to adjust. We have to be agile in how we're going about getting in front of our audience. So we're just going to dive right in. We've got 5 tips for you here today. And this one I think is the most critical, Jade, and one that I see so many people miss because you said it, maybe it's a lack of time, or maybe it's just too hard. The data can be confusing, and so we skip over the analysis and the benchmarking. Mm-hmm. So I thought maybe you could walk us through these first critical few steps where, number one, determine what's working and what's not, and then sharing with us why this is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the biggest thing when you're setting out on any type of campaign, whether that's an isolated campaign for the holidays, or whether it's a campaign to grow your brand awareness, or a campaign to grow your fans, your fan pages, your fan sizes, you always have to start with a good benchmark. I think a big mistake that people run into is saying, well, we grew XYZ amount, and people are like, well, is that good? Is that bad? How does that compare? It's hard to know if you're doing well if you don't know what your baseline is. So I think a big part of figuring out what's working and what's not is figuring out what has been. So establishing a baseline, figuring out, this is the status quo, is an essential first step to figuring out how you are going to improve and figuring out how much you're improving. A great example is when we plan our content calendars or any campaigns that we are doing, we look at the past year or we look at the past month and figure out, what was the average engagement, traffic, etc. And instead of setting goals like drive more, traffic, or drive, 500 additional visits, we're looking at increasing things by percentages. We want to do this month over month. We want to grow 130% in comparison to last year. So it's just making sure that you know where you stand before you set out to achieve a new goal is essential for success on social, especially when you're thinking about increasing Facebook organic reach.
Well, and you said, I think, another really important thing that I didn't want to skip over, which is being very specific, too, in what you're looking to achieve. Because I think as you're analyzing and you're looking at those benchmarks and where you've been and where you want to be, many times we're too broad,
right,
and not specific enough. And I know that's something that you really hammer home, is getting super duper specific.
Yeah, goals are a very important part of my job. I also believe that sometimes social media, because of its nature and its age, doesn't necessarily always get the rigorous goal setting process that a lot of other digital channels get. But social, like all the other channels, needs to have really rooted goals. They need to be SMART goals. They need to be very actionable, very measurable, and very relevant. So I would definitely agree. I think, making sure you have the goals that you need to achieve your ultimate result is really important, and just making sure that those are following a SMART model and following what you are looking to do as a brand is essential.
So once you've benchmarked where you have been and what's been performing, now it's taking all of that, really analyzing exactly like you said, what's working, what's not. So what type of content is resonating with your audience, and then breaking all of that down, putting those into those SMART goals, and then also benchmarking your competitors, because I think that's another area where we get a little muddy of, well, I don't want to be my competition, and this isn't about being your competition or swiping your competition's ideas. It's because if you've got competition, well, then you have very similar customers, and benchmarking is really going to allow you to examine exactly how their audience is interacting with their content, how their content is performing, and then, of course, how your content is performing in comparison. And this has been a really important piece for us, Jade, is to every single day take a look at what our number one competitors are doing. What are they talking about? How are they using content to interact with their audience? And it's always interesting to me to see what is resonating, and then what isn't, and then diving further into, well, why isn't it, and why is it that the audience seems very uninterested in that? Because so many times I think as marketers we think we know our audience inside and out, and if we're not looking at what the data is telling us, we can be way off, and all of a sudden our whole strategy is off because we didn't stay focused on those goals.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think the same way that you benchmark your performance, you should benchmark your competitors as well. If this company is a competitor of yours, it's likely that you share a lot of the same audience, or they have some audience that you would like to capitalize on as well. So in that vein, you definitely want to capitalize on the things that you're seeing them do. So you want to understand what their performance is like in comparison to yours, understand how that's going to change over time. Maybe it's impacted by some of the initiative and campaigns that you choose to run going forward. It's just another way to measure what's effective. If this brand is competing with you, it's likely that a similar strategy might work for your brand as well. But regardless, it's just good to understand where everyone is positioned and where your competitors are positioned in terms of content and how the audience is consuming that content.
So where would you suggest, if I were a company that was just getting started with competitive analysis, and I know we're going to take a look at a report, but how many competitors would you actually track to give you a really good sense of what's actually going on out there in the market?
That's a really good question. I don't think, I'm not a fan of big competitor sets. I think in all likelihood, there's probably only 5 that are direct competitors. Although it changes from industry to industry, I'm just kind of pulling on my experience. But I think less is more, especially when we're talking about qualitative and quantitative analysis. We want to make sure that our data set is something manageable and something really, really relevant. So someone might be a competitor in the marketplace, but maybe they're not a competitor on social. I would prioritize, if you're optimizing for social media, prioritizing the competitors that are competitive with you on social, not just in stores or for thought leadership. So definitely make your competitive set relevant to social. And then that being said, we also, if anyone is interested, we have some free tools that you can run a quick Facebook competitive analysis right now at simplymeasured.com/freebies if you want to get an idea of what the competitive landscape looks like for your brand.
So, and it sounds to me like what you're saying is get really narrow in who your competitors actually are.
Right.
And then let's talk a little bit about what we should be looking at. So, what's involved in the Facebook competitive report? How detailed does your analysis need to be to get started? And how much time on average do you think this is going to take somebody?
That's a good question. I think I'll start with the time piece. I think that reporting and analysis, at least for me, takes up 20% of my day. I think that is, I do work at Simply Measured, so maybe that's a little bit more than the average Joe. However, I think at minimum, you should be dedicating at least 10% of your time to analysis, especially when we're talking about competitors. Without this type of data, you won't be able to do some of the things that make you successful on social, like benchmarking and optimizing. It's an absolute essential activity. And I think to really get a deep level, or maybe not a deep level, but the right level of understanding, I think it's important to look at your total engagement as a percentage of fans in particular, because we all know that different pages come in different shapes and sizes, but that doesn't necessarily mean that because you have a smaller page, you have a less quote-unquote healthy page. This is just a sample report. This isn't even correct data, but this is just dummy data. But point being, you can see that even though Arc'teryx has a lower amount of engagement, their engagement as percentage of fans is much higher. So that's always something to keep in mind. People have different goals. People have different size audiences. So you really want to pick and choose your metrics wisely. I think that's a great metric to measure. I also think looking at which types of content work on each brand is really important. And then obviously looking at, new page likes and how that trends over time. That's really important as well, so you can track their growth.
Yeah, well, and content types, we're going to dive into that as far as mixing up your content, but that to me is such a critical piece and something we study constantly, just in terms of is a link getting more love than a video or than an image, and then really diving into what type of an image is it? Is it funny? Is it serious? So there are so many different pieces to this that I think you can dive into, but starting here with this competitive report, such a great way at a glance to just see, and you've got 5 different competitors here, and I completely wholeheartedly agree on keeping it around that number. Otherwise, you're getting far too broad again, and especially if you're getting started, it can be a bit overwhelming.
Right, absolutely. I completely agree. Yeah, I think keeping your data set relatively small and picking the metrics that are relevant to you is an essential practice because there's a lot of data out there. It's just a matter of picking and choosing what makes sense for you and your brand.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's talk about mixing up the content, because we definitely know that if you can tap into content that resonates with your audience, then you can maintain your audience's engagement, because all of a sudden you take all of the guesswork out of what is working, what they love, what they want to interact with, what they're looking for. And as I said at the beginning, it's always changing too. Your audience is changing, your market is changing, their needs are changing. So it's again important that you not only start with the benchmarking, but you continuously come back to those insights, and we'll talk a little bit about that towards the end, how you can use those insights to keep you evolving and pushing forward. And Mallory Lukchik says, people share, read, and generally engage more with any type of content when it's surfaced through friends and people they know and trust. And this is where I think content has been an enormous opportunity for all of us as businesses, whether you're a small business, an entrepreneur, or a big brand, to build that know, like, and trust factor through the content that we're sharing. And you mentioned that it doesn't matter what that content is, Jade, as long as it's interesting to your audience. It's arousing that curiosity and making them want to engage.
Absolutely. Yeah, and then I'm just going to call out, not a shameless plug here, but from some of the stuff we did in the Post Planner case study, in terms of like the type of content, whether we're talking about links and photos and videos and things like that, methods of content delivery rather, it's important to understand what your audience likes, and if you're looking to grow your Facebook presence, it's actually important to look at what your audience is willing to share. So I really truly believe that that optimizing for sharing to grow organic reach is really important, and Post Planner did a great job of that in 2015. They posted a ton of photos because what I would surmise because it generated a ton of shares, which helped propel their growth. So in 2015 alone, 76% of the photos that Post Planner posted were shared. So that's an amazing statistic, and it's really, really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and obviously our content strategy is going to be a little bit different. So we are a social media sharing platform. So we're helping you find engaging content and then post that over to Facebook. And so what we do so much of is that whole idea of eat your own dog food. Do exactly what you're preaching and you're teaching. So we use so much of that content that we're finding within our own app, and within the app then it goes through that scoring algorithm so that it's predictable and we're able to predict our results, and so we're able to learn and grow as we go along the way. That hey, this did well previously, probably something very similar is going to do just as good again. But all of that to say, our strategy, your strategy at Simply Measure, not necessarily the perfect strategy for everybody, but the type of content we're going to talk about right now is something every single company can work in. And this is probably one of the top things we get brought up to us, Jade, is, well, I don't feel like I can share that funny quote or that silly post because that's not my brand personality. And to that I say, you really need to get clear, first of all, on what your brand is all about and what your personality is and how you're going to portray that on Facebook. But I also think there's a time and place for everything. You don't have to be serious all the time. I think people love that insight into who you are and what makes you tick outside of maybe those normal business hours. And I think all of that lends to a brand voice, which Simply Measured has done a terrific job, and I know that is so much of what you're doing every single day in creating that voice that people connect with. And so I think that's a big thing that so many have to consider as they're trying to determine what is their perfect mix of content. And I think that's where that Facebook fan page report comes in, where you can look at how has your audience reacted to the content that you've shared so far.
Yeah,
and if
exactly.
if you're not getting that interaction, well, there's a telling sign, right?
Right, absolutely. And I think, there's a place for both qualitative and quantitative analysis here. Obviously, we're looking at something that's just focused on content types. It won't tell you if it was a quote or if it was just a generic post from your blog or whatnot. But the point being is, if you know something is working, you should continue to do it. So to your point, Rebecca, I think brands can always kind of stretch what they think that they can do. I think people are really scared to kind of unbutton the top button and let loose a little bit, and I definitely think that if you find a way to make it work for your brand, you should. And then what this can tell you is what is the best method to do that. Should you be using links? Should you be using photos? Should you be using videos? A lot of times people in social media organizations will just blindly say, oh, let's post a video. But the truth is you should be asking your audience, and a lot of that data that you would use is already there. So using the Facebook fan page report, you can tell pretty quickly what type of content is generating the most engagement for your brand, or you can get even more granular and see what type of content is generating the most like shares, comments, or likes for your brand. So I think that unbuttoning the top button and showing brand personality is well and good and absolutely essential, but making sure you have the best method of doing so is something you can do through data analysis.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we have found is that there is a method that works, as I mentioned before, extremely well no matter the industry, and that is using engaging content that leads into what we call your hooks. So let me explain what the two of those are and then how those work in tandem to really drive your engagement. And you can see this in action on our Facebook page every single day. So engaging content is it's that funny, those interesting quotes, all of those memes, things that you see out there across Facebook every single day, and they're creating curiosity. They're getting that engagement, as you talked about, Jay. They're getting people to share your content or react to your content, comment on your content. It's something like this one that we posted, decisions is all we, put in the text there. And then it's when you're deciding whether to drive to work or leave the country and start a new life. And on a Monday, who doesn't relate to that? It's pretty funny, right? So it's, again, it's finding that balance of that funny content. And so we lead with the funny content, we lead with the engaging content, and then we take that engagement that gets us out into the news feed, and we capitalize on that basically with what we call our hooks. So the hooks are links to your blog posts, your evergreen content. It's all of that content that you've created. So it could be videos. It could be content like today from a webinar that you're offering up a replay. It's anything that's still interesting, that's still relevant, that you'd like to keep top of mind and in front of your audience. And so we're using those engaging, that funny, I say funny because so much of what we do is funny, but anything that's interesting to your audience. It could be goofy, it could be silly. All of that translates into higher engagement, which then propels you into that hook-based content, which is the really super important content, the content that's asking your audience to take action and click over to your blog post or click over to your website or sign up for your next event. And oftentimes those are the ones that you hear crickets. Nobody's actually engaging with that. So give your content a lot better chance to be seen by leading into it with that engaging content. And then write and share evergreen content. So this is one that, again, if you look at our Facebook page, you'll see we are consistently going back through and sharing all of that content that we know is valuable to our audience and is going to be interesting to them, and we are putting that out there on a schedule. So we don't just post it once, we don't just put something up on the blog and then forget about it. We're keeping that going on an ongoing basis because, as we all know, we are moving fast within that news feed, and we've got to be able to keep that content out there in front of a whole new audience. And you can do that right within Post Planner as well. We have a recycle feature where you can just click that recycle button and boom, any of your evergreen content is going to drop right back down into your queue, into your plan, and so it's going to continuously come back up without you having to think about it. And as a social media manager, wouldn't you say that that's probably one of the top challenges, Jade, is remembering all of the content that you've ever created out there and making sure you're keeping it in front of that audience at all different hours and all different times.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a big challenge for most social media managers. I think the biggest challenge, and you kind of touched on this a little bit, is making sure that it feels fresh for the audience, even if it's an evergreen piece of content that you use all the time. Repurposing and reposting it is totally essential in this day and age to get the most out of these pieces.
Well, and I think there's two really important pieces there that I'm guessing you would agree with, which, first of all, evergreen content is that timeless content, that it's sustainable, and it again, is something that I think we often miss, where we post and we put it up once, and then we think, oh, well, everybody's seen it, and we move on to the next thing, instead of recognizing that we have only tapped into a very small percentage of our audience. So mixing that content up at various times is going to help us reach a larger audience. And then you're having that system in place where you're consistently getting that content out there really frees up your time so that you're not so focused on just posting content. You can actually come in and engage with your audience, which is another area I think a lot of people feel strapped for time.
Right, absolutely. No, I couldn't agree more, for sure.
Yeah, it's finding that balance of your content and the right tools and understanding when to get that content out there, and then also sharing other people's proven content. And this is a great way for you to show your fans that your focus is all about them. It's not just about you. You're not just promoting your latest and greatest product. You're not just pushing out, that latest service that you just came up with yesterday, but that your first priority is sharing valuable content, and it's regardless of the source. And I love this idea because I think for so many years we thought it had to be all about us and we couldn't share other people's content. And now we know that there's predictability within sharing other people's content. And I always use Kim Garst as such an awesome example of this because her engagement is just phenomenal, no matter what type of content she's posting. And this was one she just posted. I just went and grabbed it earlier today. Can't sleep. Try talking to the shepherd instead of counting the sheep. And what I love about Kim is she does mix her personality with her brand. She has no problem in putting her true voice, her authentic self out there. And I think that makes a huge difference in how people react and respond. And I know we talk about authenticity a lot within social media, but it definitely does not mean that it's any less important. In fact, I think it's more important these days that who you portray yourself to be, who you say you are, is who you actually are. And Kim, without a shadow of a doubt, is that same person. And you can see how that translates into her engagement. And so with any of her content, what you have is the predictability that if you were to share her content, you're doing a couple of things. First of all, you're tagging her, you're saying thank you for that content, so you're building rapport, you're building relationships, and then you're also passing on content that's already been proven to perform extremely well. So if Kim were one of my competitors, I could safely say that a lot of her content that's performed well with her audience would probably perform well with mine because we share very similar content. So it goes back to, Jade, what you were talking about in getting hyper-specific, in knowing who your competitors are so that you can really dive into that competitive data and how that audience is responding, and then being able to take that and translate it into the content that you're creating.
Right, no, absolutely. I really think that people are a little bit too nervous about sharing other people's content. I think whether it's an influencer in your space or a noted publication or even one of your fans for like UGC, we shouldn't shy away from that. It's all part of the content mix. And I think people will ultimately reward brands for being a little bit more genuine in the post or in the content that they post. As always, you should measure the impact and make sure that you are seeing the fruits of that labor, whether it be in engagement or impressions. But I think it's a great a great tool to, spread the content love, if you will.
I think that's a perfect way to put it. Well, and as we talk about not being shy and really letting your personality shine through, a good friend of mine, Mia Voss, does such a great job at this. And she was just at Dunkin' Donuts world headquarters, and so many of her posts were silly, just like this. But it really speaks to her brand personality. And so anything else would feel extremely inauthentic. And if I started to see things where she was sitting at a desk or very serious and taking herself far too seriously, I would know something was up. Something wasn't quite right. And that's where you start to see that exponential growth, where you start to see that that community that it comes around you and is just dying. They're craving your content because not only have you listened to them and you see exactly what they're looking for, but now they feel as if you're sharing a piece of yourself. You're sharing your brand in a way that really speaks to them, that feels very true to the problems that they're dealing with or the struggles that they're going through, whatever the case might be, and that you're positioning that in a way that you're saying, hey, I get it, it's tough, and Simply Measured, I mean, my goodness, you have to tap into, I think, just about everybody's fear within the social media world, which is tracking so much of this data that has been a bit ambiguous. It's been a little scary or daunting to step into that world. And I think that's where all of the free training that you offer and the free reports simplifies the process and makes me feel like, oh, hey, I got this. I can do this, as opposed to feeling as if I'm just out here trying to figure it out on my own. And I think that all comes back to that authenticity, sharing your personality, and letting people know that your brand is actually there to help them.
Right. No, absolutely. I completely agree. I think brand personality is super important, and we try to do a good job at Simply Measured. Some people are like, oh, social media data, like, sounds a little dry. We try to be cool. It's tough, though.
Yeah, well, we all try to be cool, right? Some days it works, some days it doesn't. Right. Some days I just want to be more Marie Forleo because she is super cool all the time. But another awesome way to improve your organic reach is through video, whether it's live or recorded. Woo! Video is just a powerful tool these days, and Social Bakers found that videos have 135% greater organic reach compared to photo posts on average, which is just crazy awesome. And you see here with Marie, she's got Marie TV and has been consistently putting out recorded videos for years. This one in particular, just 20 hours old, already had 28,000 views. She already had 686 reactions, 184 shares, and that was just the beginning of this video's life. So using video is such a great way to convey who you are, what your brand is about, what you do in a very different way. And what I love most about it is finally being able to get face-to-face with people where you see or you hear people that you never had previously. And I get that a lot, Jade. I started as a blogger back in 2004. So I've established a lot of relationships with a lot of people, and since live video, I can't believe how many people say to me, Rebecca, I've never heard your voice, or I've never seen your face. It's so crazy. Yeah, so just that ability to create that even deeper connection is not to be lost on any company, no matter the size.
Right, absolutely. No, I completely agree. I mean, live video is definitely something that all brands are looking to capitalize on. You see it not just on Facebook, but on all the networks. That's really coming in vogue. for me and Simply Measure, it's definitely something that we're looking to experiment with over the next year. And I think they make it so easy to do so at this stage in the game on Facebook, particularly, that all brands should consider integrating this into their strategy and definitely taking the measurement. There's a lot that I'm sure they'll release in terms of video metrics down the line.
Absolutely. And we've got a few so far, like this one, which is people spend 3 times longer watching Facebook Live videos compared to those that are no longer live, which, again, another big opportunity for you to incorporate live video. And at Post Planner, we use a mix. We use a mix of that recorded video. We use a mix of live video. So it could be a webinar. We love Adobe, all of the Adobe products, creating little short videos like maybe something for this webinar where it's just a 30-second promo that we put together through Adobe. And then we mix that in with live video as well. And you can do so many different things with live video. Repurposing your content is just one great way. But I love Pat Flynn from Smart Passive Income. This example, I had watched this video a while back, and it just cracked me up because of the simplicity and the idea behind it. And he's just a funny guy anyway. But if you look at the title, it says, "This is how I got rid of the birds pooping in our backyard." And then the hashtag, let's see, I don't have my glasses on, so I'm struggling to read it, but it's basically teach everything you know. And you can see there that he's gotten a crazy amount of views just because this was very relatable, very funny, very in the moment, but he took it and he used it as a teaching moment. And you can do exactly that. So with live video, don't feel like it has to be as structured or as serious as maybe your webinars or maybe previous videos on YouTube that you've done, where Facebook Live gives you that chance to show behind the scenes with your company or talk about those silly things that go on in your day-to-day that translate into that teaching or learning moment for your audience. So again, just like sharing your personality, don't be afraid to share more of you than maybe you've previously done with webinars or with recorded content. And then, of course, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about maximizing your growth with visual marketing, because this has been such a huge contributor to our growth. And you can use these images in so many different ways. We've talked about the quotes and the memes and all of those different ones that you see performing every single day on Facebook. But you can also use them as, you know, a banquet for the eyes to really take your audience on a journey with you and your company. And my friend Ann Tran, who is traveling all the time to incredible places, like she's in Norway right now, she shares all of those beautiful images. And you may not travel all over the world for your job, but I guarantee that there are things around you every single day that you could take pictures of, that you could share, that would be interesting to your audience. So don't get caught up in just that one type of graphics or one type of image. You can use this in so many different ways. I shared on last week's webinar with Canva that we had taken just a whiteboard that I had scribbled a bunch of notes on and turned that into an image. So it's things as simple as that you would maybe find hard to believe that would be interesting to your audience. And then doing so much of what Jade's talking about, which is then pay attention, test, and see how it does, how your audience actually responds to that. And that's where you can look to photos and their performance on Facebook.
Right, yes, absolutely. And as you really nailed it on the head, is you just have to analyze how your content is performing and figure out what works best for you. This is pulled from a study that we did on the Interbrand 100. We found that for most of them, they were prioritizing photos and they were performing very, very well for them. This might not hold true for every brand, but point being is running those reports and finding out, is the content I'm posting effective, is an essential part of planning and analyzing any type of content strategy.
Yeah, and obviously we're a huge fan of visual marketing for reasons you already mentioned,
Right.
and just some really important notes that we detail within a bonus that we're going to offer at the end here, which is making sure that your images are bold, that they stand out in the news feed, that they're eye-catching, and that they're simple to scan. We really tested different fonts and the look and feel, and as you can imagine, because we're all moving fast, if you can't capture attention within that split second, you've possibly lost the chance to ever get that attention back. So make it short, sweet, simple, to the point. Like this great quote from Oprah, I feel that luck is preparation meeting opportunity. It doesn't have to be long to make an impact on your audience. It just needs to be easy to read. And then we've talked so much about posting funny and entertaining pictures and how it can humanize your brand and make your page approachable, make you fun. And instead of being that brand that you're at arm's length and nobody can contact you and you don't interact, don't be that brand. Don't be that entrepreneur, that person. Leverage humor in a way that is true to the nature of your company and the nature of your business, and really invite your audience in to go on that journey with you, to have some fun with you, to learn more about you in a way that isn't dry and boring and the same old, same old. I don't know how many times I go to pages and it's like every other post is almost the same exact thing, just worded a little bit differently. So that's where the creativity comes in. You just have to start to pay attention to what they love, and then figure out how you can take that and evolve on that and iterate as you go forward. And then number 4 is targeting your posts organically, and using Facebook's organic post targeting is such another, I think, missed chance for so many pages where they're not targeting based off of age or location or language or gender or so many other ways that we can target those posts. So let me just give an example on this. You have a situation where you have a post that maybe you're going to be speaking in the Los Angeles area, and you want to let all of your fans know in Los Angeles that this is happening. Well, do you want to put that out to everybody? Probably not. Not necessarily going to make sense for every single one of your fans. And that's where this comes in, where you can start to pick and choose who you want to put that content in front of based off of what you know about your page, based off of who your fans are, based off of their age or where they're located or what they've interacted with in the past. So again, it goes back to really understanding who your audience is, and there are big differences you're going to see in what one group of your Facebook fans likes and what maybe another group likes, and so being able to really target those posts once you determine what their interests are is going to open up your content to a different market in a whole new way, and really allows you to present your content in a whole new way as well. And so again, we come back to the data, because so much of this is about understanding who your audience is. And Jade, how are you doing this every single day? How are you using information that you're pulling from reports to be able to better understand, kind of get inside the head of your audience?
Right, absolutely. What we really are looking at when we analyze our audience is how they share content and the content that they share. So we think that the content that people choose to read and choose to share tells us a lot about the person or the audience at large. For example, if someone is sharing a white paper about how to optimize your social posts versus how to set up cross-channel reporting. It might tell us a little bit about the sophistication of our audience or the sophistication of their social programs. So what we really look at on Facebook in particular is the content that's being consumed and how it's being consumed. And from that we make a lot of inferences about our audience's preferences. And a great way to do that is using the Facebook Page Insights report. That'll tell you a lot about the content that is being consumed and shared or liked, as well as overall trends with your page.
Well, and if you are a visual person, like I very much am that person, I love this.
Right.
Because it just makes it so easy to see all of that data without, an Excel spreadsheet or, feeling like it's just a whole lot of numbers. So I know that will really speak to a lot of other people as well.
Yeah, and this is the Facebook engagement megaphone. This is a mainstay at Simply Measured. We pride ourselves on this. This is kind of what people screenshot and send to their boss and whatnot. This kind of tells you, in summary, the whole story of your performance for any given time period. So you have your activity on the far left, the interactions in the middle, and then the results on the far right. So it's a nice trended view.
All right, so we come to our fifth point, which I think this is kind of pulls everything together and critical to your strategy if you want to increase your Facebook organic reach, and that's posting to unique audiences at the right time. So not only can you post the right content to the right people, but you can also share the right content to the exact right audience. And this goes back to not just sharing everything with everybody, but identifying those best times. When are people interacting with your page, and when are you getting the most comments or the most reactions or the most shares, and what type of content at what time is generating that interaction. And that's where this type of report, and Jade, you can kind of walk us through this, it really comes in handy. We look at this a lot as far as really from that difference in content. So a link post or an image post, and what times are those going out, and do we need to maybe juggle those around because it looks like images are doing better at a different time. So it gives you a lot of terrific insight.
Right. Yeah, so this is just something that's available in the Facebook fan page report. It tells you about your most effective times and days to be posting. We really like this just because it helps people optimize for those hot windows. And as we kind of spoke about earlier, if you know which content works and you need to, let's say, bump up what you're doing at 7 a.m. on a Sunday, try using one of the content types that perform really well, and it'll help boost your overall performance. But this is just a really nice snapshot of knowing, when your page is really active and when is the best time to post that content that'll really hit home.
Well, and I think this is especially important if you have a global audience and you're trying to identify when your audience is online, which is 24/7. But as you can see here, you definitely have those spikes where there's a day, there's a time, there's a type of content that is performing a whole lot better. And I think this also helps in that situation that I was talking about where you're posting very similar content. So being able to post something that is similar in nature but written for that exact audience is where this comes into play too. Where, you can really get more specific and targeted to that audience instead of that, hey, let's be everything to everybody kind of scenario. I think this is where you can take your Facebook strategy to the next level, where maybe you've even hit a ceiling or that wall of, I've grown my engagement not getting any further, doesn't seem to be growing anymore. What else can I do? And this targeting, these last two that we just talked about, I think are essential to taking that next step and getting even further into the minds of your audience and staying top of mind so that they are seeing that content that you're putting out there, and you're not posting at a time that you're missing out on maybe 50% of your audience because that's just not a time they're online.
Right, yeah, absolutely.
So all of this is, it brings us back around to Facebook organic growth and where we're headed. And I know we've talked so much about organic growth, Jade, and it's easy to see that it has become harder and harder to reach your audience. It's easy to see that if you don't have a growth strategy in place that's data-backed, it's going to be almost impossible going forward to capture your audience attention. And if you don't have a strategy in place that is a nice mix of different types of content, but also hyper-specific to your audience, it's going to be impossible to reach your audience. So what is going to be critical is, as they say, knowledge is power, and really understanding what is available to you. What can you tap into? What can you better understand that's going to give you better results within the next couple of weeks, within the next 30 days? And we have proven this over and over again, not just with our page, but with all kinds of pages, that if you just follow a few key steps in identifying your market, really understanding who they are, then identifying what is performing and what's performing extremely well and how you can translate that into your business, and then what type of content your audience is looking for, and mixing that up with those engaging pieces as well as those hooks so that it's not the same type of content every single time, and then getting specific with your audience. All of that is going to lead to that exponential growth within Facebook, that growth that you never ever thought possible. And so what we have really found is that, getting high organic reach isn't just about that one post. So you have to step outside of that idea that everything lives in a silo, because it's all connected, it's all interconnected within your strategy in a way that usually it's a combination of what we're talking about here today, that you're mixing up your content, you're getting it out in front of a different audience, you're doing it at different times, but you're always consistent in how you're doing that and how you're reaching that audience. So again, it's testing, looking at those Facebook analytics, seeing where your fans are from, creating those targeted groups for fans within those countries or within those areas so that you can get that right content in front of them. And then always thinking about and putting your audience first. I know it's easy for us as marketers to make determinations off of the data that we look at and skew it based off of what we know we like. But of course, we all know that it's all about our audience, seeing what they like, seeing what keeps them coming back for more time and time again, what keeps them talking, and then what keeps them sharing all of that content, and then rinsing and repeating and giving them what they want over and over and over again, because that's another myth, that once you find what works, you got to start all over again because now it's boring and everybody is sick to death of your content. And again, that is an absolute myth. Once you find what works, you can continue to test, make iterations, but once you find that, stick with it and keep it going. And then watch as you maintain that consistency as you see your growth start to increase. And it's not going to be overnight. This is not a, get rich quick kind of scheme. It's all about consistency and putting out there what your audience is looking for. So we've got a couple of bonuses here for you today. If you're interested in learning more, because really all we got to do here today is scratch the surface, we would love you to take advantage of our step-by-step guide we've put together to increasing Facebook organic reach by 193%. We took everything that we had done within our strategy over the last year, and we put that into an ebook with all of the data that Simply Measured had pulled together, everything that they had found, and we put it into a form that just says, for you, this is all you have to do to take exactly what we did and put it into your business. And you can download that for free at bit.ly.com/PP for Post Planner Organic. So bit.ly.com/PP Organic, and that's going to give you access to that free report with all of our findings, all of our secrets to how we grew our Facebook organic growth. And thank you so much to you, Jade, and to Simply Measured for allowing us to be a part of that, for putting all of this together for us, all of the work and time that went into it. It was awesome and exciting to get to work with you guys.
No, it was great. Thank you guys so much. And thank you for everyone who's tuning in. You can learn more about Simply Measured at simplymeasured.com. We have some free reports you can check out, simplymeasured.com/freebies. And if you have any questions, you can just tweet me directly. It's my full name with the @ symbol in front of it. So thank you guys so much, and thank you guys for having me at Post Planner. And Rebecca, thank you as always.
Thank you. Can't say it enough. And yes, absolutely connect with us on Twitter at Post Planner, and I'm at Rebecca Radice. We'd love to hear your thoughts and your feedback as you download this huge finding of how to increase your Facebook organic reach. So to everybody that was here live, everybody that's listening to the replay, thank you again so much for being here. Hope you have a great rest of your week.
Awesome.